Hey, Brother Daniel here. Just another rant in the work truck. So I got a question for you. For those of you who choose to put your children in daycare, okay, and look, I know we're not talking about, this woman is in the situation and she has, I get all that. I'm talking about, although it would apply to those people, but I'm talking about people who willingly choose to put their children in daycare, willingly choose to put their children in a public school or a private school, a Christian school, whatever. Obviously somebody's going to get offended. This is one of those sensitive topics or whatever, where it's like, oh, how dare you? What about all the single moms in the world that are, it's like, I get it. But I want to present to you a thought-provoking question, okay? Here's the question. For those of you that put your children in the daycare, okay, are you 100%, this is like a gospel icebreaker, like, are you 100% sure if you were to die today? All right, are you 100% sure that your child is not being molested? Are you 100%? Because here's the thing, if you say yes, Brother Daniel, I put my child in daycare and I am 100% sure that he is not, or she is not getting molested, okay, then you are being dishonest. Because it's not possible to be 100%. You do not know what is going on with your child in the daycare, in the public school, the private school, Christian school, Sunday school, nursery. You do not know 100% what is going on with your child. You don't know who they're around. You don't know what they're being taught. You don't know, what's influencing them. You don't know anything, okay? It's not possible to be 100% sure. So that ought to be kind of thought-provoking, okay? And here's the thing. Once you accept the fact that you are not 100% sure, is it really worth the risk? Only a human being would come up with such a wicked, vile idea of giving their child to somebody else just for the whole day. I just saw a video, and this lady, this daycare worker, hold on, did this recording stop? Are we still recording? All right. So, I just saw a spam call. Get spam calls all day long. It's nuts. I'm sick of it. Stop, just leave me alone. Who is this, is trying to sell me trash cans and stuff. But I saw this video, this lady threw a shoe at a kid, from across the room or something, just chucked her shoe at the kid's head or something. And it's you see these stories of these daycare workers are running cockfighting rings of children. It's they're doing UFC matches in the daycare, and kids are getting molested. And think about it. Just at a baseline of what a daycare, let's think the best case scenario of a daycare. I have people in my life who put their kids in daycare, and I'm just horrified by what they say about it. It's you have a little boy and you're handing him off to a daycare worker all day who you don't know. If you're being honest, you don't know this person. You'll never get to know this person. You never will fully know who this person is. Let's just say they're a good person and they have no ill intentions. Are you comfortable putting your toddler with a stranger who is going to go into the bathroom with them and you know what I mean? Just an innocent, I'm not even doing anything nefarious, but just an innocent, helping them through that process, being there with them with their clothes off and helping them wipe and these kind of that's weird, bro. I could not imagine being comfortable with something like that. And that's just like best case scenario. That's like, oh, this is just a good innocent person who's trying to, help me. That's weird. The best case scenario is weird. Changing your baby's diaper. Like, you don't know anything about this person. And the thing about places like that is, where is like a predator gonna go? Is a predator gonna go like work somewhere with adults? Like, a predator is gonna seek out a place that is trusted, where people trust to have their children there. Just blindly trust. Oh, well, it's church, so I'm gonna sit in the service, but I'm gonna send my kid with some lady for a couple hours. Like, what are you talking about? You don't know what's going on in there. You don't know what, and you're not teaching your children. You're not teaching your children about. You're relying on somebody else to train up your child. The Bible says, this is a huge criticism I have of fundamentalist churches that put the children in a children's ministry. Because these fundamentalist churches are like, well, we're never going to go contemporary, we're never going to go modern, and, blah, 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 and these modern churches are wicked, and, you guys created the modern church. Like, you realize that, right? Like, it's your fault that the modern church exists, because you took an entire generation of children out of the church service, out of the fundamentalist church service, out of church. You took them out of church. You took them out of church. You took an entire generation of children out of church. And you put them in the back room or in the basement or wherever. And you fed them a bunch of candy and coloring books with a bunch of Bible verses of like weird Bible versions I've never even heard of, like the MEV or what. I don't even never even heard of the MEV. Was it Modern English Version? I don't know what it is. I'm not going to send my children to be taught by some short-haired woman out of the MEV that church is silly songs and running around and coloring books and candy, okay? And then these people have the nerve to criticize a modern church. It's like, you created the modern church. You're responsible. These modern churches, we as like a fundamentalist would describe them as like an adult daycare center. Or we would describe them as like an adult, it's like a Chuck E. Cheese of church. It's a fun center for adults. It's a sing-songy, cotton candy, lollipops and flowers, motivational speech in between a giant rock concert. It's like, you created that. The Bible says, train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. So if you're choosing then to not train up your child, and in fact choosing somebody else to train up your child, and that person that's training up your child is training up the child not in the way that they should go, in the wrong way, okay, then when they are older, they will not depart from that. It's just, why do Christians have such a hard time with the Bible? It's like, nobody has a hard time with the Bible but Christians. You know what I mean? It's like, you guys are the worst. It's like, it's what it says. It says, to train them and to teach them when they wake up in the morning, when you walk with them by the way, when you put them down to bed at night. Like, that implies that you're with your children. And obviously men, somebody's got to pay the bills, okay? Somebody's got to stay with the child. Somebody's got to pay the bills. Well, why can't the woman pay the bills and the men stay home? Because the woman has tits. Because the woman, the baby came out of the woman. Like, it came out of you. You can feed it. I can't feed it. Oh, how dare you? You can do bottles, and yeah. So let's get our children attached to plastic and to silicone. Let's get our children attached to objects like pacifiers and bottles and blankies. You know, these little kids that have like, oh, they carry around their little blankie everywhere. Like, it's something I noticed about my kids, they don't do that. They don't like, oh, when I go out in public, I need my blankie. I need my little stuffed animal. Otherwise I can't. Do you know why your child is like, my children aren't like that? I just blew my mind because I just realized my children are not like that. Do you know why your child is like that? It's because they're attached to objects. Because they're not attached to you. There's no attachment to you. Because you didn't give birth to your child. Okay? They numbed you up. They cut you open. They wheeled it away, sanitized it, clipped the tip of its ween, destroyed the nerves down there. It put a bunch of injections in it. And then you hold it for like 5 minutes, and then you put it in a little basket. And then you have it in a basket for a couple months until you finally give it to a daycare. And that child's raised in the daycare, child's raised in the public school. This stuff gets me fired up because this was my experience as a child. Okay, I don't have a great connection with my mother, because of this. And, I will preach this stuff. You know what? I will preach that women need to stay home. I will preach that women need to breastfeed their children. I will preach against daycares and nurseries and this kind of stuff, and preach that, women shouldn't be persecuted for wanting to keep their children in the service. What's the point of going to church if I have to just sit by myself every time? I got to sit by myself, and my wife's got to go in a closet somewhere. Why am I'm not going to go to church then, and you just, the dirty looks, because we want to keep our children in the service, because my wife wants to breastfeed a baby with a cover on. Okay, the dirty looks every time. Oh, there's a peep. Everybody looks. There's a peep. There's a peep. This is ruining, put that baby in a daycare. Put him in a nursery. I'm trying to be spiritual over here. All right, I'm trying to be hypnotized so that I can lead up to this emotional altar call that I'm going to do. All right, don't mess this up for me. Yeah, that's what Jesus wants. My bad. People wonder why society is the way it is today. Wonder why people are just like on their phone. Like I'll admit it. I have a slight addiction to my phone. Like I do some scrolling and stuff, and I need to be better about that. And I'm trying to like replace it more with like reading a book or reading the Bible. And I'm trying to, like if I go to the bathroom, I'm going to try to not bring my phone, but I'm going to bring a book or something. You know what I mean? Like stuff, little things like that I'm trying to work on. But I've never, and I never will be, because when I'm on my phone, it's like I'm at home, I'm chilling on the couch, and I'm like scrolling, just doom scrolling, But when I'm out in public, I'm not on my phone. A lot of times I don't even bring my phone with me, into the church building or something, unless I'm going to like record a sermon or something, Like I don't even keep it on me when I'm like not in the house. But you have these people who they're like walking around scrolling, like they're walking around, like not even looking up at reality. They're just like looking while they're walking. And this whole thing leads into, fornication. This whole philosophy that we've been under is what leads to a society that is based around fornication. Because the mindset is like, well, I have to put my children in the daycare so that they can be socialized with other children. But here's the thing is like little kids, they don't need to be socialized with other children, Like that's not how, what I mean by that is that's not how you teach them to be socialized. That's not how you teach them to behave. Little kids, somebody said this one time. They said, when's the last time, you've been in a room of 30 people that are all the same exact age as you? As an adult, that never happens. Little children need to be around adults, specifically their own parents. And it's even better if the grandparents are involved or the aunts and the uncles are involved. If we could have that, because look, the nuclear family is a lie. Don't get caught in this conservative Republican, We need to defend the nuclear family. That's a psyop. That's a lie. That's a false binary. You're either a homo or you're a nuclear family. No, it's like, it's the Bible teaches the multi-generational family. In like Timothy, and it says like, the older women teach the younger women to what? To marry, bear children, and guide the house, right? And then it says, but some women are already turned aside after Satan. So that implies if you're a woman and you're not, you're a married woman with children and you're not guiding the house and bearing the children, you're turned aside after Satan. Like the word bear, like the Second Amendment says, like, we have the right to bear arms. It means we have the right to have weapons, and we have the right to have our weapons on us. Like, to bear them means to, like, I'm having my weapons on me, on my person, and that's the way mothers are supposed to be. Marry, bear children, and guide the house. Your children are supposed to be with you. You're supposed to be bearing them. Like Miss Jenny, you're going soul winning, and you're wearing your child on a thing. My wife is constantly wearing our children, bearing them on her body as she is, doing chores throughout the house. That's a good mom that does that. That's what a mom, and then the child gets attached to you instead of their little binky or whatever the thing is called. Their little binky and their little blankie. The blankie and the binky. Like, a little animal or something. Like, that's weird behavior. That's like a red flag for like a traumatized child where they can't go anywhere. You ever see those parents? You're around those parents where it's like, we lost, the binky, we lost the blankie, we lost the stuffed animal, we don't know what to do. And it's like, yeah, because that child's whole world is an object. That's why we live in such a materialistic society. Okay? Because people are taught, they're trained. Train up a child in the way they should go. When they are old, they will not depart from it. You're training up your child to be attached to material things, to objects, rather than to you. And you're throwing them in to these daycares and these elementary schools, middle schools, where it's like Lord of the Flies, where it's like 30 kids and it's just like hierarchies get established, bullying happens, like it's not a healthy environment for children. And then that leads into, well, you can't fit in unless you do drugs and smoke cigarettes and drink and commit fornication. It's like that breeds that stuff. And that's the I probably got off track, but it's like that, to go back to the fornication point, like, people have attachment issues today. People, like the doom scrolling, it's like, it's hard to commit. A lot of these movies and TV shows are just trash. But in general, it's hard to commit to like a movie or to commit to like a show, like a long form piece of art, because we have such, we have attachment issues, because it's like, it's hard to commit to this movie. It's like 2 hours long. I could just go like non-stop doom scrolling for 2 hours and like have a much better time. I don't have to commit to anything. I can just scroll away if I don't like it for a millisecond. So it's like, and then you got the Tinder. Like, I've never done Tinder, but it's like, from what people say, it's like you're swiping and stuff. You're swiping, and it's like there's no commitment. There's no attachment. We have attachment issues, and we're trying to mimic that by having these physical relationships with strangers, and it's just deep down, it's taken like a piece of your soul, like, just as like a thought experiment, like what if every time you were to commit fornication, like, let's say if your soul was an actual like object, like that, it had mass, it was a piece of matter, it's an object, like an egg shaped, like it's like a goose egg, like an ostrich. It's like an ostrich egg shaped thing. Like maybe it's the size of your heart and it's within you somehow. Like if you were to commit fornication, let's say if every time you commit fornication, you lose like a millimeter of like your soul. you know. And it's probably way more than that. But it's like, let's just say like you lose them, you know, you do it a few times, it's just a few millimeters. You know, it's like after a while, like that woman who's like, you know, sleeping with 1,000 men in a day or something, like whoever, you know, like that woman has no soul now. You know, it's like, and now, oh, she's a born again, she got baptized in a modernist church, you know, and she's a well then, you know, whatever, man. So it's kind of hard for me to believe that at that point. You know, all these OnlyFans girls who made millions of dollars, they're rich and independent. Now I'm gonna be now I'm gonna be born again. I have a hard time believing that. Just because of you've corrupted yourself, you've corrupted thousands of people out there, you've profited off of it. Like you've gone so down that deep rabbit hole. It's like, I don't know if like, you know, your salvation is legitimate or not. You know, I think you're just doing the Christian grift now. You know, give all that money back then, if that's the case, you know. Sorry, it was a mistake. Whoops. Here's my mansion. Here's my money. I'm just going to give it all away. No, because you're trying to cover up, you know, who you really are. Because deep down you feel that shame. But see, we live in a society where shame is like unacceptable. You cannot shame. You should not feel shame. You know, it's like, you should feel shame. You know, shame is like your consciousness telling you that you've made a mistake. You know, like I saw this we live in a society of no consequences, but I saw this video the other day, and it's so funny. I sent it to some people because it was this woman on Instagram like making a video talking about how like she doesn't clean her room, and her room is like filthy. Like there's just like, you ever been in somebody's house and there's just like clothes, like piles of clothes like all over the place everywhere, and it's like, you know, there's like, you know, dog hair dust bunnies and crumbs and like little pieces of food everywhere, and like Q-tips that are used and dirty, and toilet paper rolls, and it's like, bro, like this, like, what are you doing? You know, like you're living in filth. Like just vacuum your floor like once a week, dude. It's not that like complicated of a thing. But it's like this lady, like it was just filthy. Like it's borderline like hoarder behavior, you know. And she's saying like, oh, you know, my mother used to punish me and shame me for not cleaning my room, and so now I just like have a messy room as an adult, because it's like, what's the problem here? Like your mother made you clean your room as a child, so now you have a messy room. Like that's my trauma, my childhood trauma, you know. But see, look, we'll tie it back in, because part of the problem is I bet you that girl was raised in daycare. I bet you that girl was raised in the public school. You know what I mean? And then so you have no connection to your parent, and so your parent just becomes the oppressor, where it's like the only time you interact with your parent is for the 2 hours a day where they're yelling at you for not cleaning your room, and then that's just who your parent is to you, as opposed to having lots of lovely interactions throughout the day. And then there's discipline occasionally, but now you only know your parent as discipline. You only know your parent as like someone who shames you. So yeah, maybe, you know what, I'm on that lady's side. Keep your messy room. You know what, your mom did traumatize you because she didn't raise you, and the only time she interacted with you was when she was actively shaming you and chastising you. So that's the only relationship you have with your mother, is just correction. And there's no love and no teaching and no beauty and no attachment and connection at all. And, you know, I feel bad for these kids. You know, like I said, there's people in my life that have kids that they do the daycare thing or whatever, and they're constantly just like, their kids are just like on a non-stop just like schedule. It's like, and on the weekends it's like, you got to do this or you got to go to the grandparents, and it's like, when do you like, it's just sad, because, you know, you can see it in their children's eyes, how it's slow. Like where some of these, when they get to like 5 and 6 years old, like you see them being slowly broken, where they're starting to like become a person now, like their consciousness is like awoken and they're like aware, right? And they're like a person now. And they're starting to kind of like want to rebel and want to question these things, but they're just being like beaten down. You know, kids need to just be at home, dude. They don't need to be doing stuff, you know. They just need to be at home. You know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't be like doing stuff until you're like, you know, 7, 8 years old. Then it's like, all right, you know, maybe like we need to get you into some jujitsu or something. You know, maybe you should learn a sport or learn gymnastics, you know. Not a sport, because like sports are gay. But like a like something beneficial. You know, jujitsu, gymnastics, you know, these kind of things. Those are beneficial things. Dance. You know, learning an instrument, have music classes. Those are beneficial to your soul and to your spirit. Football, there's some good stuff that's like, you know, competitive, but it's like, do a wrestling camp instead. Because like football's pretty much like worthless. You know, it's like good for athleticism and like competition and stuff, but it's like, it's just a simulated warfare. It's like, just do real warfare. Like, do jiu-jitsu, do wrestling, you know, taekwondo or tournaments or something. You know what I mean? Like, that's actually more beneficial. Because football is kind of just a made-up thing. It's like, anytime you watch football or basketball, you know, it's like, just let them fight, you know? Like, why? Like, football should be like MMA rules alongside football rules. It's like full-blown like MMA, like team versus team MMA with a ball involved. You know, it's like, that's something. That's something kind of cool. Or like, you know, it should be like, you know, like they have a MMA where it's like you're in like armor, where you're in like knight armor and you have like blunt, you know, weapons like swords and maces, and axes and stuff, and a shield if you want. Like, you can kind of choose your own weapon, you know. And like they should have like that, but it's like capture the flag. Instead of a ball, it's like, you know, this team has the flag. I guess you could do a ball, but it's like some sort of object where it's like, this team has the object over here. You got to break through like their line and get the object, and then bring it back to your line. You know, it'd be like, let's evolve past football. You know, football is kind of like, football is what happens when you don't have war in your country for 200 years. You know what I mean? That's how you get the NFL. You know, it's like, and you got like basketball. Like, basketball is even worse because you're not even allowed to like really touch the guy at all. You know, it's like like basketball is pretty much worthless. You know, and you know, they got magnets in the balls anyway. You know, there's magnets in the basketballs and in the footballs, and then there's magnets on the rims and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't a legitimate competition. You know what I mean? You can't fake like MMA. Like, you can fake boxing to a certain degree, but like, it's really impossible to like really fake like MMA. It's too real, you know. Anyway, I think that's all I got. You know, I appreciate you listening. You know, like and subscribe and comment and whatever, and we'll see you next time.